All right. Thanks for joining us. My guest today is David Thomas. David and I met when I was a regent for the University of Colorado system, and he was instrumental in helping me understand the possibilities for online education and some of the challenges it has in implementation. David currently is the executive director of online programs at the University of Denver. DU is a private nonprofit research university with 12,000 students, about 100 undergraduate degrees, and a little more than 120 graduate programs. He joined DU after 20 years at the University of Colorado, Denver, Anschutz Medical Campus. At CU, David held a variety of roles there, including leading CU Online, the university's academic technology and online program development division. He continues to hold an appointment as assistant professor in the Department of Architecture at CU Denver. David, welcome. Thanks for being here. You're on mute, so you might want to unmute yourself.
All right.
Excellent.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that I'm happy to hear I was instrumental, because I think you're calling me a tool. So that's
well, I was called worse as regent. So if that's
okay.
That's the worst you're getting called today, that's not so bad. And one of the things we're going to get to towards the end of the conversation, and I left it out on purpose in your introduction, is you are known as Dr. Fun. And I think that's super fascinating across a number of things for business and higher education. So we'll talk about that. But let's start with online learning. This is a hot topic as the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, threw a lot of people into online and distance learning. And I think there needs to be a more robust conversation about the whole thing. So let's start there. It seems like everyone, the last 5, 8, 10 years, whatever the number is heading to online. And I'm talking specifically about public colleges and universities and nonprofit colleges and universities like University of Colorado, University of Denver. Where in general do you see online going for that particular group of people? And so what I'm saying that for is to leave out sort of the for-profit technical colleges.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. What I would start with is that I always knew online was sort of the future of higher ed. I didn't anticipate a global pandemic any more than anyone else did. And COVID brought the future to us very quickly. Or, my line there was like, I feel like I was teaching swimming lessons at Club Med, and then there was a typhoon, and suddenly we're all swimming, So it's been interesting times. And it also reminds me of another great quote from William Gibson, the science fiction writer. He said, the future's here, it's just not evenly distributed. And so, again, when I talk about online, I always have this feeling that I'm talking about stuff that happened 20 years ago that maybe now is just now getting on the radar. So, and an easy way to kind of get kicked off on starting this is just to look at, things that have happened through digital revolution that we are familiar with. And I like to think of this as disruption. The good that threw out the old stuff, and the bad that threw out the good stuff, as well as the new, which has brought in stuff we're still trying to figure out. So, look at something like journalism, something that, both of you and I have had a background in. And the internet has been a boon and a disaster for journalism. I mean, it's destroyed local newspapers. It's destroyed a lot of journalistic accountability. At the same time, let's be honest, it has extended the reach of news to places it never was before. There's a news culture which is probably bigger than it ever was. So for good or for bad, I don't know. I mean, we're able to see micro reporting on things that are happening in a neighborhood because people can get online and start sharing information. So is the internet a net positive for the newspaper business? I don't know. Hollywood, I don't know. For me, it seems like it. For music, I don't know. For the longest time, higher ed felt like it was too far up on the shoreline for the waters of digital to reach, or we could go down and take a dip and take what we wanted. Well, COVID is washed over us from K to 12 and beyond, and so I think that we are in the middle of that now. So when you ask the question of like kind of what's going on, it's like, well, all of a sudden the reach of digital technology challenges our understanding of who we can teach. The investment we've made in teaching technologies has changed what we think we can teach online. And then, the question that will probably come up around certification or credentialing has changed as people start to question whether or not you need a master's degree or a bachelor's degree to really show competency to be employed. And so, You know, I guess this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, you know, okay, the typhoon is here. We're all soaking wet. What does that mean?
Well, what do you think it means? I mean, so let me give you a little bit better than that. So
Sure.
you've been involved in this for 20 years or even longer, and you've been watching it slowly progress. And there was a huge, we don't need it, we don't want it in higher education. It's beneath us. And now it's like, oh, well, maybe we need to, there's a bigger embrace of it. So when it comes to traditional, again, like the DUs, like the University of Colorado's or the University of Michigan's or what have you, um, where do you think they'll be taking this?
Well, where it will be taken will depend a lot on what society wants, what people are willing to put up with, and what they're willing to pay. I can tell you that to understand how higher ed is dealing with digital education, dealing with the typhoon, you kind of have to think a little bit about what higher education has been, you know. And you know, one line I always like to use from you know, Scott Galloway, the Professor G, the New York University marketing professor, and he's kind of a blowhard in a good way. But you know, he says that, you know, higher education is one of the most important social accelerants out there. It's the thing that allows a farm boy to, you know, go to school, learn electronics, and then found Hewlett Packard, right? I mean, he just kind of like sees that, and that's true. I mean, higher ed really is that, and higher ed's also been an enforcer of the class system that says, you know, if I am a wealthy family, I will send my kids to an elite school where they will get a good education and they will meet other elites. And so it's kind of like why you look at, you know, where presidents come from, and they strangely keep coming from Ivy League schools. The education's not so much better as it's just, you know, the social lubricant there is better. So higher ed kind of already has this a little bit of a Hydra thing of being both the thing that destroys class and the thing that enforces class. But look at what we are in terms of you know, what we are physically. And whether you're a small community college or a big state school, you're an elite private, it doesn't matter. We're campuses, we're buildings, we're classrooms, we're laboratories, we're performance spaces, we're offices. We have this thing called tenure. So basically we have these like, you know, highly skilled professionals on long-term contracts. And like any other organization, we don't want to change things, right? And if you think that that's just an obvious statement, think about the NFL. They debate years changing one rule, like whether they're going to kick from the 15 or the 20, and then people argue about it forever, right? I mean, so imagine that times infinity in higher education. So anything that disrupts what we already are good at is considered, you know, endless fodder for conversation. So where should we go is a different question than where we will go. And this is where I would kind of
let's
yeah.
split
So
those two. Go,
so
yeah,
this
go.
yeah, and this is where I kind of get on my high horse about. I think that what the debate is that we're having is not face to face versus online, which is better, which should we spend money on. It's what is the purpose of education and what is the nature of education. And I don't think that online is responsible for this, but I think online is the scalpel that has laid bare the conversation. What is the purpose of higher education?
So what is it? According to Dr. David Thomas.
Well, my opinion, or you
Yeah.
know, well, I mean, Steve,
What do you
yeah,
or here's in the consensus.
yeah. Okay, so I've got a line on this, and the first thing I want to say is I think that across the higher ed spectrum, at big schools, little schools, private schools, public schools, even the nonprofits, I think that you know, almost to a person, people believe in the mission of education. I have just not encountered anyone that I thought was truly in it for nefarious or selfish purposes, right? I'm not saying nefarious and selfish things don't happen. I'm just saying I really do believe that people that are in education believe in the value of education. But what is it, or what should it be? This is something that I have come to the conclusion of in my own mind, and probably how I manage my own value system. But I think there is a distinction between education and human development. So my kind of my little 10-cent saying on this is, higher education, despite the name, is not in the education business. We are in the human development business. YouTube is in the education business. If you want to know how to fix your furnace, or you want to know how to, you know, neuter your dog, there's a video on YouTube to how to do anything, right? If you want to understand the deeper meanings of identity and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, trust me, there's a whole bunch of really good videos in that. You don't have to go to USC Film School to have that information imparted to you. So what's this human development thing? I think that, especially at the undergraduate, but certainly even at the graduate level, it's taking a human being and saying, where do you want to get to, and let me help you. And education is a component of that, but I don't think teaching them all the stuff is enough. And the line I like to use here is, there's a professor in Boulder named Noah Finkelstein, and Noah's a physics professor. And Noah said once this thing that really stuck with me. He said, my job is not to teach physics, it's to teach you to think like a physicist, right? And you'll hear a lot of conversation.
Let me figure out where we are. So your argument, and I think it's really interesting, is that we're in the human development business. I've said,
yes.
I would, my version of that is we're in the life transformation business. So it's the same. Once I go through the process, my life is different. What the researchers do, it makes lives different, all that stuff, right? And what I'm hearing you saying is the content business is different than the transformation business.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, we're going to call it the content business if that's easier. But I even think that the skill business is different, you know?
Great. Okay. Skill. So great. Skill business versus your language would be skill business versus human development. So how do we take, if we are not doing a particularly good job, which I'm inferring, in the human development side online, how do we begin to address that from the public university, the nonprofit university point of view?
Yeah, and you're pointing in the direction I would like to go in, which is, I think that higher ed has had a PR problem, because I think we used to say, come to us because we have all the books and the professors, and then the internet intervened and like, oh, all the internet, all the books and all the professors are available. All that knowledge is out there. All that basic how-to stuff is online. So then we said, no, we're a community. We're a community of people, and they're kind of like, we're stumbling towards we're the human development, right? We're human development. We just haven't figured out how to say that. What I think online happened early on is online was seen as an expedient means to an end, which was, how do we reach people that aren't here, right? And the things that were easy to do were, read this text and answer these questions. Take these math problems and here's how to do them, and then now practice the math problems. We were very content and skill based in how we approached online learning. And we perfected it in a certain sense, in my opinion, with something like Masterclass, right? Learn to cook breakfast with Gordon Ramsay. Learn to write a novel with Neil Gaiman. You know, learn how to lie from a guy at the FBI. But what's wonderful about them is it's just PBS, right? It's just information porn. Nobody thinks they're going to be a chef after watching that program with Ramsey, you know.
So, but how, I do think that a structured syllabus, a structured course system that I take English 101, then I take English 201, then I take English 301, there's a progression and a sophistication of my understanding of that topic that I'm not going to get if I'm casually, and Neil, by the way, Neil Gaiman's thing is brilliant on Masterclass, but I'm not going to have the same discipline or attachment to an outcome that I would be if I'm in this structured setting that many of us need to actually progress in our learning.
For sure. You need a personal trainer. You're not going to exercise, basically what you're saying.
Well, unfortunately, yes.
Okay, but a lot of us are like that. And I want to come back to that concept, but I want to hammer this nail a little more, the difference between what I'm calling education and human development. I'd say, like, you could watch, years of videos from Gordon Ramsay of how to prepare food, how to work in a kitchen, and I guarantee you are not ready to work his line in his kitchen. I guarantee you that.
But
right?
You're not ready to do that after you go to a culinary school. You have to keep practicing and doing it and doing it and doing it.
But you're probably more ready. You probably you've come up through, you've been in the sweat and in the heat, and you've been in the stress, and you understand the difference between technique and what it takes to live the life of a chef, right? So this is, again, I'm just saying, I think that's why Gordon Ramsay is teaching these classes, and you probably make you a much better cook at home. But I don't think that he's asking anybody, did you take my master class before he
So
hires them?
so are
Yeah.
you saying in the classes you help design and that people help deliver that they're missing something?
I think that the realization I have come to over time is that we have been delivering what we were asked to, which was to deliver an education. And I
Content.
think that this is back to some of the innovator's dilemma kind of concept, the Clay Christensen idea that we're selling bicycles not to people with cars, we're selling bicycles to people who are walking. I think the people that were not able to get to a campus, who were not able to maybe finish a degree or to get that graduate degree, they were willing to take the education because it was still water to a thirsty person, right? And so I don't feel any remorse, but I think at the end of the day,
And
as
let me hold on.
yeah,
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 but I still think that's amazing. I still think we're falling short for serving not so the innovator's dilemma is perfect because he talked about, and your analogy of bicycles is great. Like the non-consumers are the people that aren't coming to campus now have an option to get an education when they didn't before. And I
yeah.
think that's amazing and transformative for those people. And I don't want to underplay that, but keep going.
But it is. But in my sense is it belies this underlying concern, which is that we're creating a new class. So it's what we get the usual hierarchy of schools, and now we've added this online sub hierarchy where we sort of like we just keep cutting away a little bit, just keep cutting away. And so well, hey, it's an education. It's better than no education. It's so to speak. It's to say like, oh, you're in a very wealthy school district. Great, you guys get French and Latin and computers, and hey, poor people, you should be happy you're learning math at all. And what are you going to say? Well, yeah, it's true. It is good that we're
Well,
learning math, but it's not fair.
it comes back to your point of, is it the old saying of, look, I worked in a field, so my son can work in a factory, so his son, and the men, but whatever,
Yeah,
can be an artist,
yeah,
right? So if I get an online education, my children might go to Berkeley, arguably the best public university in the world, and then their kids are going to go to Princeton. I
potentially.
mean, it's yeah.
So I guess I have to be kind of super careful here because I don't think that there were as many ill intention in how online grew. But when I say online's laid this out bare, I think that online has eventually asked the question, whom do we serve? To what end is this serving? And to serve education is a noble end, right? Part of me is like going, if we were really serious about this, because we could provide education at scale, the federal government should just approve a standard undergraduate curriculum that's free for every American, that's basically run on the tracks of Coursera, right? Why does it cost any money at all? I mean, if it's just to teach me Calc 1, Calc 2, Western Civ 1, Western Civ 2, think about it. I mean, if that's really all an undergraduate education is, then why isn't that just free and available online?
That is a great. I'm curious about that.
And so this kind of returns back to, so what really is the structure of higher education? I talked about buildings and faculty and labs. I left out that there's this research component and there's this social good that universities contribute, and that's all knitted in there too. But in terms of education, I think that we slipped a little bit. And what I'll just put it to you this way, because I think, again, I think it was a collision of good intentions. I think that what happened with online is we found out that we could automate huge swaths of what I think of as the checkbox education, the objective based. Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do this? Like right now, I'm refreshing all my old German on this app, Duolingo. It's a wonderful application. It's wonderful, right? But I'll tell you what, when I actually have to talk to a German, I'm in a collapse because I'm good at the check boxes. I remember the grammar, I remember the words, but it's like that's sort of that.
Well, we lost David. Let's see if we can't get him back. I can't pause this recording, but it's been a fascinating conversation so far. We've had some disagreements, but it's a very fascinating. We lost you. We're still going, David. I just waited, and so your German sucks, is what you're saying.
It does. It does. But I probably got a little far afield there. I just think that online education, we know how to automate the basic education stuff at any level, right? It doesn't matter to me if you're trying to learn astrophysics or you're trying to learn German grammar. It doesn't matter.
So the argument I would make is that my experience in a classroom and going to a traditional campus is different than the experience I have online, but I still have an experience. I'm still growing as a human being by the fact that I have to struggle with whatever I'm learning. There is a process I'm going through. There is human development in the online. It's just a different process. And I guess the question is, if you think that's inadequate, what do you think we should do about it to make it better?
Yeah, it's a wonderful point, Steve. And it's that this is where I think we would go with this, is to say, I think that the future of online education is to actually start to ask more about that human development stuff. So in my world, in higher ed world, we talk a lot about student services, right? But I think that what we need to think about, so student services, like who you call to get your bill sorted out, or who you call for career advising, or who you call to figure out what classes you're supposed to take. I think that student support or student success is becoming more important online. And I see groups like, say, Western Governors really pushing hard on student success in terms of making sure that they have advisors that know the student, know what's going on in their life, helping them make good curricular choices, helping encourage and coaching them through, providing more and more intern opportunities, more and more opportunities to engage in the field of practice that they're interested in, providing really meaningful coaching. So like I always joke, instead of I got an MBA, now I got promoted to assistant general manager, night shift at the 7-Eleven. But that I had been prepared to actually maybe move into a management field, district manager of, for 7-Eleven.
So people that don't know, Western Governors University is this massive, one of the largest universities in the country, and no one's heard of them, but they're strictly online, and they're doing some really cutting edge stuff. So you think they're providing some models of how to make that human development process better for an online learner?
I think so. And I think that we're going to see other institutions start to recognize that the benefit of online is the at a distance, that I can't get to campus, but I can still deal with you. To deal with some of the automation, I'm going to use the dirty word, but it's really there's no value in me grading multiple choice exams, right?
Well, where's the value in me sitting in a 500-person lecture class? That has nothing to do with me. My experience in that class is crap. I'm angry. It's incredibly profitable for the institution. What is the actual value in that class that couldn't be done through another modality?
Yep. But actually, I'm generally in agreement with you, but I still remember my zoology class because I sat next to a woman named Claire. I don't remember her last name is, but I remember her. Giant lecture hall. I don't remember anything about zoology, but I tell you what, I went to every class and I made sure I sat next to her. And I think that we miss that sometimes, that the campus experience is about far more than the didactic exchange of information.
And I get, my heart is with, and this isn't an either or, and it often gets, and I know you're not arguing that, but it often gets presented. I'm either going to have this great experience on campus that's going to cost me an arm and a leg, or I'm going to get some second class crap. And I think that colleges have not, I think from a public institution, DUs and the private small liberal arts colleges can do whatever they want. But for the public universities, I think it should be more part of their mission is like, how do we reach the people that clearly have the skills and capability and discipline to do this, but just don't have the way to get here? Yeah. And so I'm sensitive, like, yes, the rich people get to have this experience and the poor people get to have that one. And so I'm super sensitive to that as well. But I'm like, how do we get, there's going to be trial and error, right? We're going to make mistakes in this process, but how do we make the online experience, it will never be the same, but how do we make that incredibly valuable unto itself?
So here's a provocative thing to think about, Steve. What if human development, the education versus human development, what if human development is expensive? What if there's no such thing as automating human development? I already know we can automate education. I already know we have adaptive learning systems. There's plenty of evidence to say if we haven't taught it with robots, we just haven't spent the time figuring out a good way to teach it with robots. I've met with people that have AI systems that can tell if you're cheating on an essay. I mean, it's just like the technology is fantastic in terms of teaching basic, didactic material, not the human development stuff. But if you need to know everything you need to know to be a gastroenterologist, you can learn that from a robot. But you're never going to get bedside manner. You're never going to learn, how to deal with ethical dilemmas.
Look, I appreciate these highly technical examples you're bringing up.
Okay, a robot can teach you how to write poetry.
Great.
You can learn to write poetry from at a distance, asynchronous, video recorded course. You can learn that. You took a class on how to write a novel from Neil Gaiman. You learned everything you need to know to write a novel, right? From one of the best.
What are the courses? So how would we do this for if the idea of education now has gone from it's a public good because we need teachers, we need social workers, we need, engineers and doctors and what have you. So we'll all chip in for that. It's reversed. It's flipped to more of it's a private good because you're going to make so much more money than I am, except for the social worker. Society is not willing to invest in that. So I guess what I'm pushing back on is I don't think the answer is either or. You either have to go through this so higher education's only for people that are 18 years old, that can not work, not take care of family members, and can travel to some other place to go get an education, or you get crap.
Yeah.
Right. So
well, I don't think it's
online,
crap, but yeah.
But your argument is, you go operate on somebody after you take an online class. I mean, your argument is you don't count. And so how do we make it count better or more or robustly? And I do think that all the applications you're talking about can be helpful. And I'm not saying zero human interaction with online, but there has to be some thread in there that offers us some hope that it's not just an either or.
Well, if you kind of track back to these mega trends I'm talking about, I think that and one thing that I need to do, we talked in the past about this. We're not talking about just higher ed. We're talking about undergrad versus graduate, because graduate education tends to be people that already they tend to be older. They tend to be in a job. We're talking about undergraduates who basically are trying to do this transition from high school into some sort of a professional career that needs or would benefit from the degree, right? And I think that we frame it that way. If I were the grand poobah education czar of the universe, or at least for the United States, the first thing I would do is I would make available a fully online bachelor's degree that you can earn with all kinds of specific degrees. You can earn fully online in a Coursera-like platform. And it would just be free. It wouldn't cost $1. It would just be free. And we'd fund it. And all the Americans that don't go to college today, that would, if they could, now have an outlet. But I still think the human development thing is maybe expensive. And it's interesting that we don't think about it this way. We think about our professors as educators. And that because of that, we have groomed them to do a job that can be done by a robot, if you think that that's what they are. But I'll tell you what, the best professors, the professors that you remember from school, and the best professors that are walking our campuses, they are teachers, they are social workers, they are priests, they're role models. They are doing this incredibly difficult work of helping these young human beings develop into citizens of the country. And that's not education. The education is kind of the other thing they do. I'm teaching you math. If all I'm teaching you is math in a 500-person lecture room, then stop. That's not a job that needs to be done by a human being anymore.
But the way I look at, and again, this would need further study than our two very strong opinions, is the human development stuff happens almost by accident. It's because
organic.
We're rubbing up against each other as people, and that is what happens. And some professors are awesome. A lot of them are terrible.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that. And the great ones are the ones that stand out and make a difference for us the rest of our lives. And boy, am I thankful for the ones I've had, right? And so are you. And so is
Yeah.
everyone else. But again, I'm at the point of if there's got to be a way that, and maybe it is expensive and maybe we just haven't figured it out yet. I'm not willing to
Yeah.
give up on the promise of online education because I see it can bring in so many people that don't have access to high quality education that are capable of having it. And that's where I'm so passionate about it. It's like, no, we can do better than we've been doing. And you're talking about the lessons learned and what WGU is doing. And some colleges are doing it, but some they'd rather, it's more like, nope, that's not our job. We're just going to raise our walls as high as possible. And if you get in, good for you. If you don't, screw you.
Well, let me give you an example, Steve. And this is where I think that, we have abdicated in, this. We continue to say, no, education and human development are all the same package. You either get the expensive package or you don't. And increasingly people are saying, there's a cheaper way to do this. You could go today without any credentials or any qualifications. As long as you have a computer, you can sign up for and you can learn how to be a Salesforce administrator. By the way, I don't think it's possible to be paid less than $50,000 a year as a Salesforce administrator. I think that it is impossible. I think it's more likely you'll be paid $90,000 or $100,000. So why don't I have these kids that are sitting at home that don't have any opportunity? Why don't they become Salesforce administrators, right? I guess they could. Because the thing is, my point is that the education is so freaking simple. Oh, I forgot to tell you, that's free. You can just go. I think
said free. Yeah.
The certification exam might be a couple $100, but I'm like saying, if you're just a mom sitting at home and you don't know what you like, hey, you got a little bit of computer literacy.
But if we all could teach ourselves stuff that way, we would.
Well,
a lot of time we need more structure than that. Yeah.
Well, but I think that's human development, right?
Yeah.
So I think that this free global education, if online has brought anything to bear, it is so mind-numbingly stupid that we haven't offered that. And we should be offering it, but instead we have chosen to follow our medieval model of every institution for itself. Every institution, many are offering undergrad. I mean, we kind of keep re-offering it, and we say, but ours is different. I don't think the underlying education is different. I think, this is David now, right? I think that the future of education, future of online education, the winners will be the people that recognize the human development component, and you're going to see it come in what is called student services, right? And it's gonna look a little bit like career pathing or on-job placements. Or here's a great one. You look up this company, this group called Minerva Education, fully online undergraduate degree, right? It's a private education price, very expensive. But here's the ringer. You move, I think, every 8 weeks to a different city across the world, and you take your online classes in Madrid, in Beijing, in Athens. And so people are paying for an online education, but what they're really paying for, back to your word, is the experience, the development, the chance to grow up. The education is almost like the lost leader. Like, hey, we'll travel you around the world and take care of you and feed you, make sure you don't get killed. Oh, by the way, we'll throw in an education while you're at it. So to me, that's it. That's the future.
Yeah, let me tie this part of the conversation up with a bow, although that's impossible with us. What I really hear you saying loud and clear is that what online education taught us is there's that split between what I call content, or you call skills, and the personal development point of view. And what you just said is, look, we should have figured out this content business part or skill part a long time ago. That's a lot of that's the easy stuff, and that's a gross oversimplification. But the more interesting, complex thing is this human development thing, and the best practices currently available. And you mentioned a few, and there's more, I'm sure, in the online space, are people that are doing this engagement with the students that's more intensive, to give them a greater online experience. Again, not the same as in person, but still offering something more robust. Did I get that right?
I think you got it right. And let me give you an example, just bring it to life. My undergraduate was in the 80s at CSU. And because I was a Colorado State University. Yeah. And because I was a liberal arts major, I didn't have to take math. I had to take math mods. And so here's how I learned math, Steve. I would go into a room, I would play a videotape, I'd watch this math professor teach it. And once I felt like I understood it well enough, I would go into the testing center that was next door and pass out of it, right? Okay, that's how I learned math. Two things that are really important to me. One is I saw that guy walking across campus one day. He had no idea who I was. He had no idea the thousands of students he had taught, right? And I was all excited that I saw Dr. Ben, because like, that's the guy that taught me math, right? That's the human. I wanted that connection of the guy on the videotape. The second thing is, flash forward 40 years later, I don't know anything about math. I'm fascinated by math. I actually have a really good mind for math, but I never figured that out because I checked the box. I know how to do these skills. I never learned what math was for. I never learned the beauty of math. I never learned to think like a mathematician. I was deprived of that development because I got an education. And so I think that this is the danger. And by the way, higher education is built to allow that to happen, that, you know, the girl you're dating is a biologist, or your roommate's a mathematician, or the pain in the ass guy in the lunchroom, you know, is an anthropologist. And you learn and you experience different people and you open up your frontiers and stuff. And I think that it's not a curriculum per se, it's an environment. It's a situation that's built for experience. Online has been terrible at that. Online has been excellent at delivering education. And I think that the future of online is to craft, we're back to our original conversation, to craft back in the human development, to craft back in the opportunities to become filled with wonder and discovery and human connection and the desire to change and the desire to learn. And I just don't think we're going in that direction right now with online in general, but I think that we will discover and get there. Does that help?
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. And I always push back when people say college kids. First of all, if people are working and some of them have a family and you're taking on debt, there's nothing childlike like that. It also limits our thinking to, oh, I have to go to, if I don't do it when I'm 18, I'm out of luck, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get that that's our model, but there's so many people that are non-traditional students over the age of 22 that calling them college kids is a disservice to all of us. So I just want to point that out. All right. Shifting gears completely.
Mm-hmm.
How are you, what is this Dr. Fun thing? Well, first of all, hold on. Let me tell people, you reviewed video games as a journalist for how many years?
20 years, a long time.
Okay. And then you gave a TEDx talk in Boulder years ago about how architecture should look to video games and how to bring more fun into the architecture and design process. Do I have that right?
Yeah. What makes places fun? Yeah.
Yeah, great. So you you have this background in video games, partly, and then you have a PhD in what?
Architecture and planning. Basically, architecture, history, theory, and criticism.
Excellent. And so then you came up with this, all jumbles together as fun. How exactly?
Well, that's the first thing I say. I don't usually call myself the doctor of fun because I think the guy is like an 80s DJ, you know, like a swarmy. He's a handsy guy, right?
Hey.
I'm the professor of fun, right? Here, look, I even have my hat. See, it says
I'm so excellent. Fun. Nice. I'm so surprised. I take that back. Professor of fun.
Professor of fun. But yeah, my area of academic study is fun, and I look at what fun is. I look at how fun works. I'm really fascinated by how we build fun things like, you know, buildings. But I've also done a ton of work on just what fun means in the workplace to motivation, innovation, creativity, and engagement. And I should tell you that, you know, I have crossed the streams, to use the Ghostbusters analogy, a few years ago with my colleague Lisa Forbes, who's a professor at CU Denver in counseling program. And we created something called the Professors at Play. So professorsatplay.org. And it's about using play and fun to transform higher education. So we just think that the power of playfulness in terms of creating human connection, adaptive thinking, resiliency, you know, positive outlook, all these really good, powerful aspects of play are really valuable to higher ed and can help us solve some of the higher ed problems. Sounds a little bit like human development, doesn't it? Right? It's like it's like trying to create an environment in higher ed where people are excited to challenge themselves, or they're excited to take on new things, or they're excited to fail and then fail and then succeed. Almost in the exact opposite of education, which is like, how quickly can I master this math so I don't have to do it anymore?
Right. What are some of the fun things you could bring into higher ed?
Boy, there's so many. So I got to give you this example.
Yeah, I know that's awfully broad. Yeah.
No, there's so many. So we talk about this array from just being a playful person to doing kind of like playful techniques, like, fun icebreakers, then to doing like playful activities, like maybe you play a game or something that's kind of meaningful to the content, all the way to full course design, right? The whole course is playful. One of my absolute favorite examples, there's a professor here, a law professor named Roberto Carrata. Roberto teaches organizational
I'm sorry,
law.
professor at DU.
University he's a professor at the Sturm College of Law.
Okay.
One of the courses he teaches is organizational law. Okay, like I'm sure you're on the edge of your seat, right?
Oh, it sounds terrible. Yeah.
It's like administrative law. I'm sorry. This is like
even worse.
The federal code for how organizations are managed or structured. I don't even know. Okay, here's how he teaches the course, and tell me if you take this course. First thing you have to do is you have to read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park. You read the book. Once you finish reading the book, you join a team and you have to propose legislation for the regulation of extinct animal parks. So using that fictional frame, now you have to bring all the administrative law in to talk about trade regulations, OSHA certification regulations. It's just like, and so he's had teams generate 50-page briefs on laws of how you would regulate extinct animal parks. I want to take that class. And I can't imagine a more exciting illustration of like the power of play. And it does not diminish the value of what you're studying, right? At all. It just sounds like fun.
Oh, it's such a brilliant way to get at that topic. Because I just intuitively, I just kind of like, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff you'd have to figure out, right? And it's a fictional case, but yeah. It's like, well, it's so this was not a fun thing, but in like Ethics 101 with Professor Marianne Cutter at the University of Colorado Springs, my first semester there, we had to grapple with real life, like death penalty and euthanasia and abortion. And, you struggle with real life stuff. And it was interesting because it made sense. But even the Jurassic Park, which is a fictional thing, but we all relate to it. What a great way to get into it. Like if you said, all right, you have to organize the Federal Labor Department, it's like, shoot me now.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great way to get into that.
Well, it's just like, Jurassic Park happened on an island off the coast of Costa Rica. So now we've got all of this, trade law and international treaties that you have to say. So, I think it creates safety because it's like, it's an environment where you can play. It creates a level of engagement because, now it's like, you don't feel like you're going to do it wrong. How can you do it wrong? Right.
Yeah.
I guess the dinos will get out. And that's just an example, and I've seen so many wonderful, like little class level examples. I mean, for example, I could tell you, Lisa teaches, mental health counseling. It's not a light subject. You're talking about self-harm and abuse, trauma, but, she does these really silly icebreakers, having people answer these wacky questions and stuff. And you can do it online or in the classroom. And what she's found from her students is that the students feel like it creates a psychological safety between the students in the class and between the professor. It kind of lightens. And so then she can really get them to engage in the stuff that's really meaningful. And I got to tell you, if I need a mental health counselor, I'd rather one that was prepared with a little bit of play than one that was prepared by the Germans who you must follow this checkbook. I should not mock. I just, I think that's our cartoon of overly structured,
Well, and of course, Freud was he Austrian, right?
I think. But anyway, so play has got a wonderful place in culture, and I'll pimp this. I don't know when this actually people will see it, but our Playposium this year in the middle of October is subtitled "Welcome to the Playvolution," and we invited this gentleman named Pat Kane, and he wrote a book called The Play Ethic. He's a Scottish thinker, and it's a play on the work ethic, right? The Protestant work ethic, like we'll work our way to heaven, and he's like, how about maybe we should play our way to heaven?
Nice.
And I'm on board.
You wrote a book on play.
Yeah, with my friend and professor at Parsons, John Sharp. He and I wrote a book called Fun Taste in Games, which I have been mocked for being the least fun title ever, and it's true. Um, it's a book about the aesthetics of games, and it's about how fun is a central operating aesthetic of play. And so it's an academic-y book.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a fun read. I'm
It's
sorry to say.
really fun. It's exciting and interesting, and
So
yeah,
let's wrap up with this back to your design and architecture conversation about
yeah, yeah.
a fun place, a place. What am I looking like? An environment that's creates a playfulness or is whimsical, or and how would that apply to higher ed? I like the, I'm a kind. I like the traditional thing of higher ed, but sometimes look, you're in a building that's not that great, or you're in a place that's not that great. How can play
Yeah.
be brought into those spaces?
You said something early on, Steve, which I think was really right on. And you said that higher education is an experience, right? It's not an education; it's an experience. And I'd point back to that great book by Gilmore and Pine, The Experience Economy. And I mean, we don't have time to go into it, but the nut of the thing is we're in the world where the highest value is put on experiences. We'll pay $2,000 for a seat at the Super Bowl, but we'll get all fluffy if we have to pay more than $1 for coffee, or for bread. So I think that the idea of the experience is that people they want to encounter things that are transformative, that they leave a different person when they arrive. And I think, for some people, those experiences could be a Broadway musical. For other people, it could be Paris. For some people, it's Disneyland. And I'm trying to bias myself that one kind of a human experience is better than the other. I think fundamentally that the universities that are the most appealing, and in Colorado, the University of Colorado Boulder, the University of Denver, Colorado College, they're places with these beautiful campuses that really offer you an experience. And sometimes we get mocked, right? When they put in a hot tub shaped like or a swimming pool shaped like a buffalo with a hot
Drives
tub.
me. Yep. Terrible.
It's easy to see that as a huge diversion from the education mission, which it is, because it's not about education, but it is a huge contributor to the human development story, the experience story. So I think just higher ed in general already should in a certain sense guard its borders, to say that a campus is a holy place, the same way that a church is a holy place. Me personally, I'll have to tell you this, because I thought, if there's anybody out there, if Elon Musk, if you want to invest in this, I am totally going to do the Starfleet Academy, and it's going to be a private, not-for-profit school. You're going to have to wear uniforms. It's going to be a 4-year institution. My graduates are going to come out and they're going to be at the height of government and industry, because they're going to be that motivated, and they're all going to have to learn Klingon. It's going to be the most fun and rigorous institution in America, and the most fun. So,
that's great. This has been a terrific conversation.
Well, thanks, Steve.
I don't think we solved anything, but it was certainly great. And this is the messiness of higher education. And this is the messiness. We try to boil it down to online, yes, online, no. It's like, well, it's complicated. We try to say, is this a serious subject? Well, actually, you can bring play to it. There's a lot of subtlety, and I appreciate the give and take we had in this conversation. And I hope everyone that watched this or listened to it really enjoyed it as well. And it's professorsatplay.org, correct?
Yeah. Professorsatplay.org. Yeah, fun times.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, David.
Thanks, Steve. You're the best. Bye.
Thanks.